Our next topic, our next presentation is from a student who's really, I think, been with me, very generous in his cultural exchange. The example I like to give the most is I told him what my favorite dessert that he might possibly know how to make was, and he actually made it for me. And this is a labor-intensive dessert to make. And he added an ingredient, I believe sesame seeds, to it that is not in the restaurant version that I had before. And the timing of this was just, I was very sad at the time he did that. So it really meant a lot to me as how much we got to talk about the different life and work experiences that we've had. And just, you know, a Fulbright scholarship is a great honor, and Vivek earned a Fulbright scholarship, and he came here to this university, and I have no doubt that as what he's learned here sinks in, and Vivek is a thinker, he's going to go back and think and think and think and probably write some about what he's learned here. And as both the specific things and the more abstract ideas come to Vivek, what he's going to, do with this degree and bring back to the Bihar province, I think is quite commendable. And I think also is commendable the choice of this project on electric vehicles. We've seen very robust market penetration with electric vehicles. Elon Musk figured out how to make the supply chain pretty clean from raw materials to fabrication, achieve marketability of the vehicle. Competitors have obviously come into the space. Margins have come down a little bit, but prices have also come down as range has gone up. Resale value of the cars kind of has gone down. So cost of the vehicle itself may no longer be the primary barrier to adoption. There are, of course, other places like how do you use it, right? Do lower income people have garages, et cetera, right? But we've done a great job on market penetration on the high margin things like electric vehicles, on cool things. But in terms of investing in our grid and the overall infrastructure to support all of this innovation, is that now, instead of cost, going to be inertia and a drag on our adoption of technologies? We tend to be slow in terms of investment in public sector things and also investment in areas where the margins might be tighter. So the infrastructure for everybody to reliably use these EVs may, who knows, be lagging behind the public's will and ability to buy EVs. And Vivek did a lot of work and really impressed me with his effort in this project entitled The Analysis of EV Charging Behavior at UC San Diego, Guiding the Expansion of Workplace EV Charging Networks. Vivek.
Thank you, Corey. Glad that you liked sesame in the dessert. I assume many of you might own electric vehicle and might have also looked for charging infrastructure and might face challenge with finding a proper spot for charging long hours. So I'll be talking about electric vehicle charging infrastructure and trying to understand how people behave if they don't find proper charging spot when they are on the work. Since this topic is very important because number of EVs in the market is growing and people are looking for charging spot during the work time. So I try to understand how people behave and what people think about the charging. I focused on the electric vehicle charging behavior at UC San Diego with an intuition to guide, as Corey mentioned, the expansion of workplace charging network. This study presents a supplementary analysis of the ongoing research under the Center for Energy Resources at UC San Diego. I'm thankful to Ryan that he gave me the opportunity to work with him. I find this subject very interesting, as I mentioned, for two reasons. One, the market for electric vehicles are growing significantly. EVs will be the future of light and medium duty transportation in the modern world. In the United States alone, by 2030, the estimates suggest that 10 times more EV will be sold out. And by 2040, 90 million EVs will be on the road. The next aspect of my interest is their contribution to the decarbonization. The growing EV uptake would lead to decarbonize the transportation sector, but an important factor is what time they are charging. In California, where solar energy contributes 20% to the overall electricity generation, charging EV batteries during when sun is shining would make extra metric tons of CO2 emission going into the atmosphere. Estimates suggest midday charging has 80% less CO2 emission per year as compared to charging during the night time. Since daytime is when people go for work, access to workplace charging becomes crucial. And that's how my motivations comes in to understand workplace charging. Data also suggests that access to workplace charging is important in terms of equity. Now, due to competitive pricing and better mileage, the future of EV derives less wealthy people are going to buy more EVs. This means there are going to be less homeowners and therefore less likely to have home charging. An estimate suggests about 15% drivers will be having no access to home charging by 2025 and 28% by 2030. So it's a clear indication that workplace charging plays an important role. These drivers must rely on alternative charging sources, that is for most workplace charging, as I mentioned. This brings my motivation to study workplace charging infrastructure and driver charging behavior at UC San Diego. UC San Diego I chose because it is one of the largest institutional charging network in the world. It spreads across the campus, and there is a significant heterogeneity in the charging, especially in terms of the garages. The number of chargers is installed upon the demand of charging is required during the peak hours. However, there are also associated challenges with workplace charging. Building charging infrastructure is capital intensive. Hence, the institution aimed to recoup the financial investment as soon as possible. Therefore, they are incentivized to maximize their charging efficiency and ensure supply and demand balance so that maximum people can charge and maximum kilowatt hour delivered. Well, driver charging behavior depends on them reliably finding charging stations in their preferred garages, because people will not travel who want charging in the SIO to the main campus. So they need something which is closer to them. Also, their behavior of energy consumption have massive effect on the network efficiency. This brings me to my research question. The first part of my research focuses on the analysis if charger at UC San Diego properly sited across parking garages to meet the driver's demand, whether future expansion occurs where demand-supply gap is high. The second part of my research is to analyze the nature of charging sessions across the garages and explain their variations. To explain it, I approached more than 55,000 individual charging session data collected over a year from 2023 to 2024 January. And the data has been provided by two service providers, ChargePoint and PowerFlex. There are other also, but I focused on the major one which has maximum expand to the campus. It helped me to explain network characteristics like available charges per garages and garage utilization as well as driver reveal preferences. This was backed by drivers' stated preference collected from 806 unique drivers who are part of the Triton EV charging club. It is basically a voluntary participation by the drivers, and they respond to certain questions. Based on those responses, I try to understand what is their stated preference For my analysis, I adopted a new method appraising supply and demand, looking at their preferences for garages, their deviation sessions, and the demand-supply ratio. For the analysis of session depth, I categorized depth based on the amount of battery charged during the session. Battery charged means like kilowatt hour delivered to the vehicle. The first part of my result explains the demand-supply pattern and the imbalance across the garages. The pattern of charging indicates high variability across garages. If you can see on the top, the demand are high as compared to the installed charger in particular garages like Athena, Gilman, Scholars. These are mostly like mixed and diverse drivers travel there. So demand is very high and supply is very less. Some garages showed high demand with modest supply, as I mentioned, whereas some with moderate demand and supply. My next step is to explain if garages with the highest demand-supply imbalance have high variation. I found it true. There is wide variation across garages. It is not uniform. As you can see, some have very high gap, and some have medium, and some have very low. It is not uniform. Some places have high gap and some places medium. This also indicates a plausible challenge with fulfilling the gap across the network. The question arises, are new chargers being installed in the high demand supply gap garages? It is not satisfactory. A subset of garages have high demand relative to the existing charger, but relatively very few chargers will be installed there. This means it is not targeting necessarily the equity issue. This leads to notice drivers' deviation and their preferred garages. Basically, session deviation means driver deviating from their preferred garages in search of charging space closer to their work location. About 23% of all charging sessions are deviation sessions at the campus. This is one of the consequences of demand-supply imbalance. Deviation sessions are important to notice as there is dollar value attached to the driver who deviate more and waste their time in finding proper garages. In terms of equity, this imbalance affects those who don't have access to charger at home. Analysis of session deviation indicates those who have no access to home charging have more deviation sessions as compared to those who have access to the home charging. This means that those drivers who are less wealthy and don't have home charger suffer most. This is certainly an equity issue at UC San Diego. In the second part, I try to explain the depth of session and their variation across garages. The depth of session is defined as kilowatt hour delivered during the charging session. That means if an EV replenishes more than 50% of their battery, they are considered as deep session. Likewise, below 25% is shallow session, and in between are intermediate session. The evaluation also suggests most of the sessions opted by battery electric vehicle are shallow sessions. This might be due to lower availability of charging stations for deeper session. Well, more shallow sessions are alarming. The shallow sessions are problematic for network efficiency and demand-supply gap. This explains that more drivers are engaging in lower kilowatt-hour delivery and thus, in principle, causing charger congestion. And that is also indicating that deeper sessions are opted less by the drivers because it is not available for longer duration halt. Also, the charging network which is provided in the UCSD have 3 different categories. One is like for 1 hour, another is for 4 hours, and last is like for 12 hours. Most people who would look for deeper session would either look for 4 hours or 12 hours. But the observation is mostly people look for in between 1 hour to 4 hours. So that means like people don't actually look for longer duration charging, and they are charging every day maybe or alternative day, which is not the good case for the network efficiency. Further, I try to explain if demand-supply imbalance affect session depth. Certainly, session depth has high variability across the garages. If you can see, the garages have all sorts of drivers who want shallow session, who also want intermediate session, and very few people want deeper session. For instance, Gilman Campus Point East and Campus Point West has lots of variability between shallow and deeper session. They are in the middle. It is higher where drivers diversity is higher. This is also indicating that charger session heterogeneity within the garages. Further, I try to evaluate how these imbalances affect shallow session. Interestingly, the analysis suggests that garages with higher demand are associated with fewer shallow session. As the campus network expands, a higher supply of chargers might lead drivers to charge more frequently with shallow session, which ideally should not be the case. So to address these challenges, my recommendations are: charger must be sited where demand is highest. It will increase kilowatt hour delivery in terms of sale, EV throughput, and thus recover the cost of investment. Garages like Backman, Campus Point East, Campus Point West, Reddy School of Medicine, Keek, where the demand-supply imbalances are high, could be more focused for the future expansion, which is not the case in the current expansion plan. Also, there should be some incentive mechanism to increase deeper session within the network. It could be like price incentive, more kilowatt delivery, lesser the price. So people will prefer more deeper session. Further, since the time was not adequate for deeper analysis, so my future work, I will try to improve my long short-term memory model for precisely predicting the session depth as a function of drivers and the network heterogeneity. This would include more driver attributes. Just now, I showed those people who have access to home charging and those who don't. But there are also other attributes which affect the drivers to choose certain garage. For example, what kind of occupation they have in terms of visiting the campus, how wealthy they are. So there are many attributes which I can include and try to understand and see what will be the future trend of charging behavior. So that brings me to my end of the presentation. My gratitude to all committee members who have guided me throughout the project. My special gratitude to Dr. Ryan, who is my chair of the Capstone project. Co-chair, Professor David Victor, who guided me for understanding the macro picture of the project. An advisor, Dr. Nicholas, who guided me throughout the coding process, because in the beginning it was very confusing to understand how to start the process of cleaning and understanding the data. Hannah and Corey, definitely your support have been incredible. Lots of motivation was required during the one-year program, but thank you for giving me all support. Also, I would like to thank CSP cohort because you have been always motivating and supporting. Thank you.
I'm curious. You had said that your data set came from a group that were all volunteers, correct?
Like people volunteer for participating in the survey, yeah.
Do you have any insight on how many people drive EVs at UCSD that don't opt in?
So I don't have exact estimate how many people drive EVs, but we are considering, because total population of people who drive into the campus, including non-EVs, are 14,000 approximately. Because 14,000 charging spots we have 14,000 garages we have in the campus. So the understanding is probably 800 or close to 800 people are the EV owners. Because people, I'm considering those who are like plug-in hybrid people are not very actively participating in the charging process. So I'm just considering 800 as conservative estimate for the population of the EV drivers.
I'm not familiar with the charging system. Do the car owners pay for the charging time?
Yeah, no, they pay for kilowatt hour delivered to the vehicle.
Right, okay. But I thought you were sort of suggesting that employers should be putting in more stations generally for their employees.
Yeah, yeah, that is my recommendation. Because if they are increasing their number and strategically to those locations where demand is high, basically they are trying to help those people who can't own the home charging. So when they are in the work, they can have the access.
I understand that, but what I'm looking at from sort of a higher level, you're sort of offloading what would be the cost of establishing gas stations for normal combustion cars to the employers, whether it's university or whether it's a factory or or something like that. And this is starting to bother me a little bit, just like the solar panels. It's great to put solar panels in, and for a couple of years you get a discount from SDG&E until the rates start to go up again. And then when you get out at 10 years or so, the homeowner has to replace the equipment.
Yeah.
So you're offloading infrastructure cost to the consumer, basically. It's just on a larger time frame. Yeah. So, I mean, are you thinking in factories and stuff that they may say, we'll pay for your charging if you just drive an EV?
I don't recommend those kind of suggestions, because then there will be kind of like lots of heterogeneity among the drivers and where to charge, where to find the charger, because this is also about the convenience of parking your vehicle. These are having some dimension. So if they are looking for if they are looking for parking garages, the most convenient way will be to install some of the charging stations in near or in those garages where people prefer to park. So I would not recommend to incentivize by giving them money, rather installing the stations where they are actually charging, where they are parking. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just sort of a follow-up. Who does the university expect to make money from these, neutral, or lose money? In other words, who pays for these stations are quite expensive.
Yeah.
So who pays for many of them?
So right now, individual service provider are investing in this process, and if I understood correctly, some portion goes to the university since they are providing the infrastructure space, and maximum profit goes to the service provider. So they are investing their money, and they are expecting to earn from the kilowatt hour delivered during the charging session.
So it's private companies that are installing them.
Yeah. I'm just going with this intuition that the demand is going, so there has to be workplace charging. Yes.
I'm glad you stopped at this graph, because this sets up my question. We're at this interesting transition point now where a relatively small percent of people who come to campuses and other workplaces have EVs. But if this graph is true, we're going to get to a point where the majority of cars are going to be EVs. And I'm wondering if you're doing campus long-range planning, providing parking is very expensive. Deck parking is much more expensive than surface parking. And if you're looking at, let's say, 70 to 80% of cars, if not more, are EVs, at some point, will a university say that providing on-campus EV chargers was a useful, transitional thing to encourage EVs, but we just can't afford this anymore, or only provide it on a sliding scale, and those people who can demonstrate they have no home charging will get it. So I'm just wondering, if you picture the campus where everyone comes with an EV, what happens to the model of providing chargers?
That's a big question. I don't. I cannot imagine if there is no charger and everybody is driving EVs. I will be optimistic that definitely if they are providing the spot to park your vehicle, definitely they can also manage to provide the charging spot. And there is a very interesting aspect, since the entrepreneurship is more in the charging infrastructure now. So more and more players may come with the different ways and means to decrease the price per kilowatt hour. Maybe there will be more technology efficiency that you cannot, like you don't have to halt for longer duration. In very short duration, you can replenish major amount of battery. So I maybe will not be answer the exact question what you asked. Yeah.
I don't know what happened to the microphone, but what you're really saying here is a paradigm shift for the whole mode of transportation. For years and years, universities have been discouraging any cars to come to campus and trying to upgrade public transport. So how do you think of that? Are we going back to the old model where everybody's going to drive, or would it make more sense to provide more and more options than driving cars?
It's a very critical aspect of human behavior. Even though if you will restrict them to do certain behavior based on the institution, people prefer to aspire more, people prefer to do something which is comfortable to them. So I don't think, like the focus of this study or understanding is also not to just focus on the educational institution. The focus is on also other workplaces where people drive and people will drive. However, the public infrastructure, as we can see in San Diego, even though if we have metro station near to the UCSD campus, we cannot rely on the metro for the SIO. So definitely there will be other means of transportation, and you cannot avoid personal choice for the car, where US demands more car than anywhere in the world. So I don't imagine those kind of scenario when people are not bringing their car, so as like the university or any workplace will not like discourage people to bring their car. So there will be some trade-off. I don't know how to imagine that situation. Thank you.